right, and then he's done. Now, rhythm and positioning. Good. Yeah, good boy. Well done. Yeah, and give him loose rein. That's much, much better. It's a shame because that's what we were trying to do when his face was sore. And I wanted you to be able to show us you've done your homework, and you clearly have. But that day you couldn't do it. But now you can. And that, you'd have to have ridden that horse to know how hellish difficult that was back in February, wasn't it? Well, it wasn't difficult, it was not possible. Now, we need to permanently park this idea that you can't do changes. And I don't know how to do that. Two are.
When we've done one, she said.
You have. Yes. But you've got to. The important thing is recognising that his canter wasn't and still isn't good enough to do changes. Now, your interpretation of that has always been, I can't do changes. And that's lived with you for much too long. And whether he was Island Pony or Total Ass, until they can do collected canter positioned over the new leg across the diagonal, and you can shorten the canter and add a bit more impulsion, it doesn't matter whether they're 4 years old or 24. It's not an age thing, it's a development thing. Yeah. Now, that unfortunate comment about you should have put it in younger, now, where that comes from is that would be a true statement if you're riding a warm blood that's just been drilled to death in counter-canter and therefore has no incentive to change anymore because the counter-canter is so balanced. Every horse you teach changes, doesn't matter how good they are or not, you do it by unbalancing the true canter so they change, like they would in the field. They don't change because you put this hip forward and this leg back. They change because they've lost their balance and they're not allowed to trot. Yeah. So you've got to be able to knock them out of balance. So if you do 4 or 5 years of counter-canter with a horse that's got a talent for changes, it's very difficult to knock them out of balance to the extent that they would opt to change. And for 5 years they've been conditioned that they mustn't change. And that would be the time where I would say to somebody, really, you should have done this earlier. But since you didn't, we're going to do this, this, and this. And that's the part that didn't come from the statement. The statement was just, well, you should have done it earlier. Yeah. Like, well, so that's the end of that. Yeah. And that's no good, because what you've got to do when you teach is say, well, that's how it is. You fucked it up, but let's unfuck it, and let's sort it. Yeah. But unfortunately, we're now dealing with a different horse. And therefore, you have to prepare him to be... So when I say knock them out of balance, you've got to be able to have them lose the balance, but still maintain a good enough canter that they could do a flying change. So the alternative is, the horse has a choice between counter-canter that would be awkward and flying change that would be easy, and therefore they're intelligent enough to take the easy option. But for as long as the option would be fall over, or change behind and not in front, or vice versa, the incentive's not good enough because neither of those options to a horse is particularly attractive. To change in front and end up disunited isn't a nice enough incentive for him to do it. So, of course, they're going to fall into trot or run off because that's what horses do. But it's absolutely not because you've left it too late. So to come back to the statement that's caused all this problem, what was wrong with this statement was that you are asking horses to change that take much longer to be good enough in the canter to be able to do it. You've got, in both him and Zeeb, you've got two horses where the weakest pace is the canter and the hardest movement you're trying to teach them is a canter movement. It takes them let's say it would take, for example, 3 years to get the canter good enough, where with a warm blood it might take only 2 years, or 1 year, or 6 months. And that's your problem, because you're the one that wants to do a flying change, but it's not your fault, because that is a trait of the breed, that the canter is the weakest pace. Now, there's other horses where the trot is the weakest pace. So that rider might get just as despondent because it takes them 3 years to get the trot good enough to do a half pass. Yeah. And where with these horses, they actually find the lateral work quite easy. You might have one where the walk is the weakest pace, and that rider gets despondent because it takes 3 years before the walk's good enough to do a walk pirouette. So one of the problems when it's a flying change weakness is it stops you a bit in your tracks in terms of progressive competing progression, where if your half pass isn't very good, you can still go and do medium. If your walk pirouettes are huge, you can still go and do elementary and medium. You're just going to get a 5.5 or 6. When you can't do a flying change, you can't actually enter because you can't complete the test.
Well, yeah, tell that to Nikki Siam.
But then I would say, well, then you can't do the canter half pass either, or the collected transition back from the extended canter yet, because the same problem is getting the canter better. But that's because of the type of horse you're training, not because of the rider on its back. And then when you said earlier, oh, well, I've done changes, but only on a warm blood that had a talent for them. But that's 95% of riders that have ever done a flying change. That would be true of them as well. In fact, probably half of them have only done it on a horse that's already been taught to do them by somebody else. Yeah. So it's not a coincidence that there are so few Frisian horses doing beyond medium, because they find flying changes very different. That's not to say we won't get it, because they can do it. Yeah. And same as a horse with a crap walk can end up doing a walk pirouette, but it will take ages. A horse with a long back and its hind legs out behind it can learn to piaffe, but it's not going to do it at 5 years old. It might do it when it's 12. And so it's a challenge for you rather than a depressing inability to do it. And it's almost as though you're thinking, well, no, it's not almost, it is. It's that you're thinking that it's your weakness that you can't do it. Now, why do you think when I rode him last time and got off and said there's absolutely not a cat and mouse chance of doing a flying change here because you can't canter across the diagonal, but neither could I. Yeah. And I still wouldn't be able to do a flying change today. I would now be able to canter across there and change the bend and keep the collective, but so can you. You've just done it. Yeah. But I wouldn't be able to do a flying change yet because I still need to be able to make 3 half halts there and close the canter shorter without him panicking, and I know that wouldn't happen. Yeah. But I know by next week you will be able to do that, but you still won't be doing a flying change. This time next year, and that's not, I don't want to depress you with that, but this time next year you'll be able to do a flying change both ways. And it's not going to happen quicker than that. But that's because you've bought horses that find it really hard. Yeah, I know. You know, how long it's taken Kirsty to get a correct, well, I don't know if you still have you? Left to right flying change. How long have you been trying?
2 years.
2 years. You're
No,
that's
right to left.
Right to left.
Left to right, right to left.
And 1 in 5 is correct
1 in 100.
on a good day. That's 2 years. Yeah. Because he finds it hard. Yeah. Now I could either say to Kirsty, well, it's your fault, you should have taught him years ago, so let's just work on the half passes. Or we just chip away and eventually it has done 3 or 4 in a lesson that are correct, 45 that weren't, but it is frustrating. But then you buy another horse that can't do the lateral work. It takes the same length of time. Unfortunately for you, it's the same movement you're struggling with. Yeah. But that's because they're the same breed. Yeah. So of course it's the same thing you're struggling with. They're the breed find it difficult.
It's very obvious when you say it like that.
It's what?
It's very obvious when you say it like that.
Yeah, but it is obvious, isn't it? It's the same as...
I shouldn't go and buy another one
No, because it won't. They can, but they don't find it easy. Not more than that, they find it very difficult. It's difficult to get a Spanish horse to do a really good extended trot. Almost impossible, but because there have been 2 or 3 in the world that do it, the people that buy them strive towards it. But every time a rider on a Spanish horse gets a 5, I could almost guarantee it's going to be for the extended trot.
And then
sure
they'll go and
enough,
get 9s for the PF.
you look at the sheet and it's got a 5 for the extended trot. Because they notoriously find that difficult. And that's with you just Frisian horses that they're lovely tempers, they're good looking, they're nice to ride, they're intelligent, they're bright. So why do you think people don't? The advanced medium classes aren't full of them when they're so nice in so many ways. They have good walks, they have good trot, they find the lateral easy. Everybody would rush out and buy one if they found it easy to do changes.
But there's more people in Germany and Holland that are at Prix St George and Grand Prix.
Yeah.
There's very few over here.
But there's more
Yes, but
Frisian
there's more-
horses there.
There's more Frisian horses and there's more people doing Prix St George and Grand Prix over there.
In percentage terms, it's probably very similar. You know, in percentages of the Frisian
And
horses and
so-
percentages of riders.
If you go and watch the Grand Prix in Germany, there's 55 in it, run over 2 days, in normal class. Over here, there's 15. So, as Joe said, the percentage of Frisian horses in Grand Prix is probably the same. Well, over here, there aren't any. But
Yeah, but that's because you can't
it's
get
because it's
0.1
less than-
horse. You know?
Exactly. You can only have
the
1/15
whole
or more, can't you? And that's because the changes are really hard. And that's not, I'm not saying you shouldn't have a Frisian horse. I'm saying what you have to do when you buy a horse like that is you've got to accept that it's going to be difficult to do a flight. You could buy 10 of them and have the same problem. And it's not, eventually even you would have to work out that it's not your fault. It is your problem, partly because you haven't yet accepted that you've bought the problem. And therefore we have to work through it, which we will do, but it's not going to be quick. It's not going to happen because you suddenly move your left hip further forward or something like that. It's going to happen because through another 12 months of developing the canter, that's going to get better. And if you, I could guarantee, if you sell him and go and buy a warm blood, you get the changes, and then you find that it paces in walk, and you don't know what to do about it. And I'll be saying, yeah, well, this time next year you'll be able to do a walk pirouette.
Yeah, no, I bought him I bought Frisians specifically so I can fit them in around work and not young warm-bloods,
Yeah,
which I've had 10 years on.
yeah,
So there was a deliberate choice.
yes,
I wanted something that was active, but I could put it out of the box, and if I can't ride for a week, it's not going to
yeah.
dictate it.
Which you can
Yeah.
up to medium level, and you are getting stopped in your tracks over the changes, but that's the price you're having to pay for the breed that you've chosen. And it's not an abnormal thing. The problem with Frisians is they can't canter until they've learned to canter.
Quite tricky, isn't it?
I mean, they have to learn how to canter, and they can, and they do. But you've got to train them to canter. Now, if you've got to train them to canter, and that takes 3 years, you can imagine how long it then takes to do the change. It couldn't be less than 3 years if it's going to take that long to teach them to canter.
I tell you what, if you're dying to teach something to do a change, I've got a warm blood.
Yeah, there you are. Just jump on and make that one change.
I could, couldn't I?
Yeah. And then it will...
Because that's probably likely to do...
What would you want?
Well, get on Kirsty's and have a go, because we've all... Somebody else has tried.